Hello and welcome to Narrowcast Boxing. It's July 10th, 2019. In this episode, I'm going to preview some fights which are happening this weekend. Full disclosure though, I don't consider any of these to be must-see, but they are pretty good regardless. I'd like to start with Rob Brant versus Ryota Murata. This is for one of the dozen or so championships at middleweight. I didn't watch the first fight, which took place about a year ago. Maybe I'll tune in for this one, but it's not really that high on my priority list. I'm kind of interested in seeing how these two stack up against the other champions at middleweight, but I don't really have anything more to add to this. It should be a decent fight. Moving on, Rey Vargas versus Tomoki Kameda. This fight is for a championship at 122 pounds. I'm interested in this fight because apparently Guillermo Rigondeaux is in line to face the winner of this fight. And I'd be interested in seeing how these two perform. I don't think too highly of Rey Vargas, especially after his fight with Azat Hovhannissian. He didn't look good to me in that fight at all. One thing to say about this fight is that I think it should be fun. The last time I saw Tomoki Kameda was against Jamie McDonnell. He had two fights against him. I don't really remember much of those two fights except that Kameda is Japanese and spoke fluent Spanish in the post-fight interview, and that really threw me for a loop. But anyway, this should be a decent fight, but don't ask me to pick a winner. I really have no idea. Moving on, we have Joe Joyce versus Bryant Jennings. This is a heavyweight fight. I'm expecting Joe Joyce to win this. As I've mentioned in the past, I don't really rate Joe Joyce at all. I do, however, think that he should get the job done here against Bryant Jennings. Jennings is crafty, and I think that this will probably go to the scorecards unless Joyce manages to finish him early, which is a possibility. I don't think Jennings will be able to deal with the pressure that Joyce applies to where he can win enough rounds on the scorecards. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a fairly negative performance from Jennings with the intention of just survival. With a lot of moving around and clinching. I'm not really expecting this to be an entertaining fight. I suppose Jennings has a puncher's chance, but that's really all of the chance that I give him in this one. I think Joe Joyce, like I said, should get the job done here. The fight that I'm most anticipating is Daniel Dubois versus Nathan Gorman. I think that this should be a good fight. It's intriguing. Both fighters are undefeated British heavyweight prospects, and I was pleasantly surprised when this fight was announced. If I'm being honest, I'm not overly impressed with either of these two guys at this point. Dubois has punching power, but he seems pretty basic in his approach. Against Kevin Johnson, he seemed to run out of ideas pretty quickly. Also against Richard Lartey, he was exchanging like a madman, and it really wasn't a good look. As for Gorman, I think he's probably the better boxer of the two, but I get the feeling that his stamina is an issue. He also doesn't really seem to have much punching power, which I think might be a problem against Dubois. Although they each have their issues, I am looking forward to seeing how this plays out. I'm leaning towards Gorman. I don't really have much of an idea on this one, much of a read. I think Gorman should probably be able to outbox Dubois if he doesn't get caught with something big. Heavyweight prospects are notoriously volatile, and each of these two are very young for the division. Regardless of that, I think this should be an interesting fight and probably the most interesting fight of the weekend. Anyway, that's it for this week. As always, like, comment, subscribe, enjoy the fights, and I will talk to you probably next week.